Hello, this is John with Brainstorm Comics and Gaming, and this is this week's Turning the Page. I'm here with Mr. Sizzle, Chandler Zirkle. I understand that you are selling shares of yourself to the public.
Yeah, but it's okay. They can just buy, like a $70 commemorative cup to go with it.
And that leads us into this week's first topic. A customer came into the store 2 days ago, and he had mentioned Otis and Rally, which I had never heard of, or maybe I'd heard in passing and just glossed over it. So I looked a little bit deeper into it. Prices, of course, are skyrocketing in the collectibles markets right now, and Rally and Otis seem to be kind of taking advantage of that. Filling the void is what I'm sure they would say. And taking exclusive items, let's say like a Lamborghini or maybe an Amazing Fantasy 15, and selling shares in it to the public. Do you think that this is a good way for the average collector to get a part of mega keys?
I don't think so. I think that we've talked about NFTs before, and I think a lot of people are saying, oh, this sounds similar to that. But if you really look at it based on all the articles I've read, this is sort of a poor man's version of NFTs, which some people would say are a poor man's version of actually having the copy of something in your hand. I think, and certainly in terms of comic collecting, I think the big thing to have is that you have the physical copy of something. So I think NFTs, while for some original art, from some creators, even though DC has nixed that, so it's only kind of available from a couple places now, that has a benefit to it. But for this, what Otis and Rally are doing, basically, there's an example, an article for like Lamborghini, let's say you own 1/100th of this. They're saying...
I think it's even less than that.
It's probably even less than that, but they're saying that your benefit, the thing that you can add on that NFT doesn't have, is that you can also get in on a special deal of, they have this like commemorative cup, or they have this t-shirt that only comes exclusively with the shirt, and it's only $75, and you're already paying more for something you don't even have.
You are underselling it. You can also buy the candles that smell like the leather of the interior of the...
All to paint that picture in your mind of, again, something that you never actually have and you never actually get to be a part of or sit in. And for me, they're saying that's a benefit and people love it. And I'm saying, again, they're kind of just filling a void that is kind of going crazy of a phenomenon right now. But in the long run, I don't think people are going to want to pay initially to have something that, again, they don't physically have, they never actually own, and then to have to pay even more to have something that's exclusive or part of the deal that you thought was a part of the package to begin with, but you have to spend even more money for something that you don't own in the first place.
And what was the thing you said before we started filming when we were discussing this topic?
I just said I think it's a really bad business model for anyone collecting, that if you think, you're going to buy something, you're going to pay for something that you already don't have in the first place. You're going to pay even more. You're going to double down and say, oh, yeah, I will buy the T-shirt too for something else, again, that you don't ever actually have.
So this strikes me a lot of, and I don't know whether you're familiar with it or not, the Green Bay Packers sell shares.
I'm familiar with the Green Bay Packers. Yes.
Are you familiar that they sell shares into their...
Yes.
But it's not real shares. All you do is get a sheet of paper saying that you gave them money.
Owner, yeah.
And they do this whenever they want to add a new wing to the stadium or redo the parking lot or what have you. And I don't know. I feel like it's a fleecing of fans because you don't really get anything out of it. I guess if you're actually live in Green Bay, maybe you get the parking lot, like I said, is better, or you go to a better experience within stadium.
But it's still minimal of what you're actually getting.
Yeah, you don't actually own a part of the Packers.
You don't get to come into the board meetings and slam down your briefcase and say, all right, we got to make some changes, guys.
Yeah, and like I said, this seems like the same sort of thing. It's a little bit different in that you can sell your shares. The Green Bay Packer thing you can't, but again, I feel like you don't really own anything. You own a sheet of paper that says, and I'm sure you read the article, and they were talking about setting up a pop-up where you can come visit your stuff once a year.
Yeah.
Which
to me, again, it's sort of, again, it's looking at it as a positive, but if you actually flip it to me, that's, again, a negative. It's like, oh, wow, come look at this thing once a year that you can never see again for another year.
And what if you live in Maryland, or let's say California, and it's in New York?
Right.
Now you have to pay for
they're not paying for that plane ticket. You got to fly all the way out there to do that. And at least with an NFT, and sometimes in some cases you can own the entire thing. It's still not physically tangible in your hand, but at least you can own the entire thing, not 1/1000th of an original artwork or something like that. It's not a piece of it. It's at least the entire thing.
Yeah, like I said, they said it appeals to millennials, but I talked to a couple customers who were in that age group also, and even they seemed a little like, I don't get it. But then again, you know, the people who go into a comic book shop probably are not their like
target demographic.
Yeah, because normally comic guys and gals like to own the stuff that they're reading. So. Yeah. I don't know. So we'll turn the page on that one. We will keep up to date on that one just because I was a little interested in it in terms of like, is this really a thing? So we'll turn the page on that one and we will move on to the next topic. Before we do that, we want to ask you to please LCS, like, comment, and subscribe to your local LCS. Brainstorm Comics and Gaming's YouTube channel. If you click on the lower right hand logo, it'll take you to the subscribe button. But let's move on to topic number 2. This is a are you buying or selling question. Boom has been blasted for the rollout of their second and third foil cover printings of Berserker. Their original excuse was they were having trouble sourcing the foil for those, and that's why they had to limit them to 10,000 copies. Since then, a couple YouTube personalities have come out and said that they are friends with the Boom owner and stated that they blamed Diamond, not Boom, and the reason for that was Diamond was told that they were limited to 10,000 copies, but they were still accepting orders beyond that initial 10,000. So they said that they knew for a fact that a store had ordered 10,000 copies. They said that they knew that several stores had ordered 3,000 copies. Are you buying or selling their excuse? All right. Are you buying? Are you buying or selling their excuse?
I'm probably gonna have to sell it. I don't necessarily have any beef with Boom. You know, I like a lot of their books. I don't have any problem with that. The whole thing surrounding Berserker from the beginning. I mean, even with the first issue, printing of that, there was a whole big to-do about, you know, like people were saying, you know, was it right or not to flood the market with all of these issues, you know, to incentivize these stores to buy, you know, 1,000 or 10,000 of these copies of these books to get the Keanu Reeves signature. And I know you and I talked about it briefly, but you have a little bit of a stronger stance than I do, of where you're coming out with a bit of a stronger take. And as somebody who knows the industry, saying how you think they're going from one end of the spectrum to flipping it around completely on the other side. So I'm sure that people would be interested to hear what you have to say about it.
So I think everything that they do for Berserker, and for what people have told me, the story is actually pretty good, so they probably didn't have to do the things that they did. That being said, I think everything that they've done with this book is trashy. And I know some people are going to disagree with me on that, and that's fine. The whole order 1,000 copies in order for the chance to get a signed copy by Keanu Reeves, or Keanu, I feel like that was, and then they made it returnable also. I feel that was just to artificially inflate their numbers and make it look like it was the biggest selling book of the year. I think at the end of the year, it probably will be still on that list as that. In addition to that, I think they're also hoping that stores are lazy and don't return the copies that they have to return in order to get their money back. So they were kind of fueling that speculator market in order to get that, the 1 in 1,000, super limited, blah, 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 whatever. If that's how you want to market that book, I have no problem with that. You know, my stance on it was I'm not participating. Like, I just didn't like the whole scheme behind it. And I do think it was a scheme. Right. So moving on to the second printing, then they came out and said, we're limiting this to 10,000 copies. So they did the 10,000 copies. And they said that, the reason is because sourcing the foil was harder. So they did a third printing, which was also limited to 10,000 copies. And again, they said that, the problem was sourcing the foil. I don't even believe the sourcing the foil thing. I mean, maybe people have proof about it. I don't know. My thing is those two came in within, I think, 3 weeks of each other, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of each other. So within 3 weeks, you got enough foil to do another 10,000 copies. That seems questionable to me. Like I said, I'm not going to say definitely it's a lie, but it seems questionable to me.
But he is. He's calling Boom liars.
Well, like I said, I feel, you and I talked about this, I feel like they were creating artificial scarcity for the second and third printing in order to go, like you mentioned beforehand, to go in the opposite direction of the initial one, which was like, oh, we have all these copies sold, and then whatever. More importantly, like I said, they blamed Diamond for the allocation. Either you don't know what allocation means, or you're just stupid, and I know normally I don't get like that. Clearly, that store that ordered 10,000 copies, if it's true, which I don't know who would tell you that 10,000 copies were ordered, because if Diamond was guaranteed 10,000 copies, why would they go back and tell Boom like, oh, well, it was actually 400,000? What does Boom even care at that point? Diamond has their 10,000 copies,
right?
But more importantly. Clearly, that store if they did order 10,000 copies, did not get the 10,000 copies. So that doesn't prove Diamond did anything untoward or wrong or anything else. I think I got like 6 copies of the third printing, which would fit in line with there being almost 3,000 stores. Actually, a little bit. I would guess I would have gotten a little bit more than what the average store would have. You would have assumed like 3.5, 4 copies per store, like which it might have been. I don't remember.
They just rip in half and send two out to everybody. Yeah.
So to me, like, there's nothing, any proof of anything along there that there was anything that Diamond did.
Right.
Like
it just sounds like it's easier to say, well, it's Diamond's fault. Don't look over here. Look over there. We're thinking of a third excuse.
So here's the thing. Everybody already hates Diamond. You know, I'm actually not on that boat, and it's not that I like Diamond either. So some weeks I get my stuff, and I'm very angry with Diamond. Other weeks I get my stuff, and I'm very happy with Diamond.
Right.
Like, it's you never know what you're gonna get, like in terms of like whether you have a damage or whatever.
They feel like an easy target right now, especially after like you said, people have already had their sentiments, but especially with like the Marvel and the Penguin Random House stuff, it feels like they're particularly vulnerable. And Boom's going, get them and like kick them while they're down type of thing. Yeah.
So like I said, I mean, I'm like you. I am selling their excuse also. I think that they're full of it. That. They're just trying to like, don't look at us. It's not our fault. Like, what are you talking about? And the funny thing is, so they're doing a fourth printing, and the fourth printing, they're doing open order. We're going to make however many we get orders for. So all of a sudden, the foil is out there to do these fourth printings. Like I said, the excuses just don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, they don't hold water. They don't.
There's a lot of back and forth wishy-washiness.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's my standpoint. I don't know whether you have anything to say in closing.
No, like I said, I think that was good. I think especially for people who don't always get to see that side of the market from somebody who is a local comic book shop owner. But yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying. You can have one excuse and die on that hill, but then if you go back and do something totally different, and then especially now, like you said, they're having the fourth printing and they're saying again, like, no order limit, like it's fine. It's like, well, wait a minute. You just said for like second and third, this was a huge issue. Now it's no longer an issue because now all of a sudden it's Diamond's fault, but that shouldn't have anything to do with your whole like lack of foil. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right.
So here's the other thing. There were 650,000 copies of that first printing out there. And they admit that the big stores have more than enough copies of it. They still have them on the wall. My understanding is there's more than one store here in Maryland that has like walls of them. Obviously, since they're a competing store, I won't mention them. But why did they set up a program where they could return them to the distributor or to the company and allocate them out to the stores that did want to order more of them? Right. That way, they're not taking that loss on the ones that supposedly they're going to return that they had the extra copies of. It seems like it would have been a better system but like I said, I won't go any further into it. I will say that it irked me also more because I've told you before, I feel like there's a lot of incestuous relationships within the comic industry in terms of YouTube personalities being involved with these companies, and I feel like they're putting up defenses that are either untrue, misinformation, or disinformation, and a lot of people, like you just said, don't know the workings behind the scenes and stuff, or they just take people at face value because they don't They just don't know.
Those are the people they get their information from. So if they say something, they're going to take it at face value.
Exactly. And again, I'm not saying what I just said is definitely true. I'm just saying logically it doesn't seem to hold water. But we will turn the page on that topic, and we will move on to the next one. So this week, Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunter started. It promises to be a huge event, filling in some time period that Star Wars fans are definitely fond of. As I tell people all the time, like, I didn't get introduced to Star Wars until I was in college, so it had a lot less impact on me than it did on others. I am excited about this series, though, because Charles Soule and Steve McNiven are working on it. I love both of their work, so I may check out the first one of this one just because of that. And it'll probably be a big storyline. But it's not going to be just a big storyline because of what's happening in the pages. It's also going to be big because of how many issues there are.
It's just a really, really big storyline.
So Marvel announced that this is coming in at 34 parts, and it's going to run through October. Is that too much for the average collector?
I think that's too much for the serious collector. I mean, even if you're, we were talking about people and other people that work here, 34 issues for an event crossover. I mean, we had people complaining about the most recent Hickman X-Men crossover, and that was only 22 issues, which, I mean, saying only 22 is crazy enough to say that. But now that they've said 34, you can say only 22 issues. I mean, I think what they were doing on principle, having this event, centering around Han Solo and Boba Fett and these characters that people really like, and this interesting
Deeply
kind of like,
in.
not tapped part of what they're doing right now. It fits in along the lines of Mandalorian, that type of unexplored area right now of Star Wars. But to have somebody come in and say, having Charles Soule, really good creative team on this, connecting all of your books, having kind of like your own universe, I think is really smart. I think Marvel should be promoting their Star Wars books like that, making them serious players. But to immediately do that with a 34-part crossover just kind of feels like a slap in the face to like the average Star Wars or comic fan who just wants to, have a fun event, 6, 8, 10 issues, like nothing crazy, nothing unrealistic, but do 34 parts. I think you're going to drive away even people who are regularly reading those books to begin with.
So our Star Wars numbers for the main title, Star Wars, are very, very good. It's probably in our top 10 of books that we sell. Meanwhile, Dr. Aphra is a popular character, but she doesn't sell anywhere near what that title does. I think that she just doesn't have the impact because people didn't grow up with her. And I think she definitely has the potential to grow into that type of character. But as of right now, it's not there.
Right.
But now they're going to force people who don't read that book.
Now you have to.
To either read it or maybe just drop out of Star Wars for the next
until October
6 months. And I think that the companies normally have this expectation, if we do a big event we'll draw even more. 34 issues is a big commitment. That's if those were monthly comics, you're talking about 3 years worth of books. And I'm not trying to obviously I own a store, I don't want to talk people out of it. But I tell people all the time, live within your means and stuff. If you don't want to make that investment, by all means, I'd rather you hold off and then come back after it's done, or maybe read the graphic novel instead. Everybody has a budget for what they spend on their things, and you've heard me before, and I know a lot of people look at me like, oh, that's not what most comic shop owners would do or clerks would do, but I'd much rather people live within their means and not feel overwhelmed by what's coming out.
Right.
Now, I could be wrong. Maybe this will be the most awesome storyline ever told. I think they would have been better served as doing it as 7 5-part storylines, and not just announces
maybe just 3 parts or 4 parts. And maybe just trim the fat a little bit there. It's hard for me to believe that. Even with 22-part, crossovers, or even with big events like Death Metal and Kane Black, you still will find stuff that you're like, okay, did this really need to be here? Was this necessary? Was there little things? While the overall storyline can still be very good and you can enjoy it, it's okay, this is a big investment for me, and I kind of feel like this wasn't necessary and you're taking a little bit of advantage and you're saying, well, you definitely need it. And it's like, well, did I really need it? In 34 to come out of the gate with that, for saying like, oh, we're not relaunching, but like we're really getting behind like our Star Wars comics, like our brand is like being strong, Disney Plus everything.
I don't even think they announced the 34 parts before the first part came out. Like,
no, I don't think it was like after the fact, which again feels a little bit like, well, now I've read the first issue, I'm invested, I want to do it, and now you're going to hit me with that. It's kind of like, waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's a grand piano that falls on your head. It's not what you're expecting, and not what, even like I said, even people, like I read comics every week, I love comics, and 34 is a lot, even for a book I really care about. Like I have to really think like, okay, do I really need to read all 34? Am I going to be completely lost? And at the end of the day, am I going to be okay with that? Because is this worth it for 34 issues?
Yeah. I'm hoping that it turns out being good. Because like I said, the creative team, at least on
it has a really awesome premise. The creative team, Charles Soule is a genius writer. Like he's been doing a lot of great stuff with Star Wars. Like everything seems like it's hitting the right notes. It just baffles my mind that they want to do it with 34 issues.
Yeah, it seems excessive. But we will see. Maybe we'll revisit this one at the end of the storyline and see whether we felt like it was well-deserved after all. We were idiots for our standpoint at this point. But,
could be.
So let's turn the page on that topic and we'll go to the next one. So let's turn to topic number 4. James Tynion this week revealed that there is a Jonathan Hickman level plan for Gotham City, saying there is a much larger narrative at work going on right now with the Bat books. He promised fans of the lesser characters that the ones that they've been clamoring for will be used. He said almost everybody is on the board. How excited should Bat fans be right now?
I think they should be pretty excited. I think everybody that's reading most of the books, it feels really awesome to be able to have all of those books, even things happening in Bloodhaven with Nightwing, all feeling like it's all a part of the same universe. Whereas, before, even like 6-7 months ago, there'd be things going on in Batgirl or, with Red Hood or with Batman, and it would just be completely all over the place. Batgirl would be here in one issue, and it's like, well, I thought she was in California doing, like all kinds of like conflicts and things like that. So it's nice to have it all in one overarching thing. And people should be really excited because you have to remember that although Tynion hasn't been on the main title writing it since that long, he has been working very closely with Scott Snyder since all the way back to his original run on Batman. So characters that I really love that we haven't seen a lot of, like Harper Row and Duke Thomas, and characters that were created like that, he was cutting his teeth on Batman working with those characters, and he's very familiar with them, and he was like learning under Scott Snyder to get those characters. Several of them have already made appearances, with Bluebird and Punchline and things like that, and promising like to keep continuing to come up. So obviously Batman is not like going away. He will still be there in a presence, but it is cool to have, kind of like if you've been in this since the beginning of Scott Snyder's run, and even before that, you have these callbacks and these characters who have kind of just been missing for a big chunk of time, really coming back up to the forefront and not just being like referenced or being like, oh yeah, they're doing their thing over there. Like, no, like they're a part of the action. And when you have all these books working together, you can have that, and they don't have to be ham-fisted into just Batman or Detective, because you have all of these titles that if they're working together properly, Robin, Harley Quinn, all of these things, you can have people pop up here and there, and it pays dividends to be reading all that stuff because it really feels like it is one big giant universe.
So I know that a lot of people have probably heard me, especially if they're in the store when Balmori and I are both in the store, me pick on James Tynion about how he keeps creating new characters and how he's hit his punch card to 50 new characters and all of that stuff. But I think Tynion has definitely constructed one of the better Bat stories going on for quite some time at this point. The interesting thing to me, the part that I took the most from his newsletter thing, was that he said, I've wanted to do this for like years. The people in charge were actually the ones preventing all this from happening. So long, Dan Didio. I got to get that in there.
You got to get it in there every time you can. He ruined everything for years.
He did. And it sounds like, I'm still not going to give Scott Snyder the benefit of the doubt because he burnt a lot of capital with me.
Give him a little benefit.
That
more than Dan Didio.
More than Dan Didio, yes. Well, a lot of people are starting to credit him with creating the Infinite Frontier because of Dark Knight's death metal, and I don't think that was his end goal at all.
No,
but
I don't either.
But it sounds like that he had plans to do a lot with these characters for a while, and it was just people in roles that were preventing it from happening. And I'm sure that you remember that when they announced the Infinite Frontier was happening, that everything that's going on right now was pretty much my hope as to what was going to go on. That they were going to hand it to the young guys and like, cool, let's let them go. Let's let them create something. I know a lot of people are still complaining about the smaller slate of titles. I feel like they're creating a cohesive universe that is more closely tied together. It feels like everything is impacting other things. I know that we had a customer yesterday say that, I don't want to read everything. I don't want to make it sound like you have to read everything in order
definitely not. You can read them they're on their own individually. Still have a great storyline. There's a lot of great creative teams. No artist or writer turnover change yet, which typically happens after a big event. Usually people stay for an issue or two and then they're bailing. That hasn't happened yet. You definitely don't have to. It just adds so much more if you do, especially if you already care about these characters in this universe of Gotham and Batman and everything. It adds to it. But if you're just reading the Batman title or just reading Detective, you have a great all-encompassing story in there.
And I want to tell you the most interesting thing about Infinite Frontier was I was not excited about Future State. I didn't read any of Future State. Infinite Frontiers made me want to go back and read the Future State stuff because they are building towards that future and trying to prevent it from happening.
Right.
And now I want to go back and read them and go, where are we trying to stop?
There was definitely some good stuff there. It wasn't overall. It was at the time. I think now retroactively, what they were doing seemed a little crazy and far-fetched, but actually seeing the game plan, again, like I said, I like it more now, seeing what they're actually doing. They sort of gave you a vision of the end without really setting up what was going to come in between. So it made you scratch your head for a little bit. But now that we're a couple issues in on most of the books, you can kind of see what their goal is.
Everybody online was like, you're taking 2 months off to tell stories that don't matter. And even we were kind of like...
I felt that the same way, but now it seems that was not the case. They are going to matter, or at the very least, they're going to do everything they can to hope that they don't matter, especially for some of those characters, because they really don't want that to be their future for a couple of them.
Exactly. And I feel like that talks to how strong the stories have been, that it makes you want to go back and read something that you were like, wait, so I was wrong about that? Like I said, I think DC is on the right path. I hope that they stay on this right path. As you and I have spoken before, we felt very enthusiastic about DC Rebirth when it first started, and then about a year into it, maybe a year and a half into it, it got derailed and
pull the rug out from under us.
We were both very sad about that.
Dan Didio is still there.
Yes.
In our defense. He's no longer there.
And then now there's the rumor that they're going to have a giant crisis level event next year, which will lead into an even bigger event the year after. I hope they don't get too bogged down in big events. I hope that it still ties into like the future state stuff in terms of trying to prevent that future from happening.
And to me, it's logistically that it would, because around that time, the Infinite Frontier 6-part miniseries will be concluding, and I imagine we'll be teeing up that event for next year, which again, but if you have one event per year, I don't hate that. Again, I don't want it to be 35, 50 parts, but I don't hate it if you have, one event a year and you are really focusing on
keep it confined.
Really good storytelling in this all-encompassed universe. I don't necessarily love the only thing I had a problem with, I don't necessarily love the Hickman-esque comparison, because I do know a lot of people who really started off loving Hickman, loving everything that he was doing, and now some of them are at a point of oh my gosh, please just stop. Just do one. Just do a couple books, just do one thing. So many events, so many giant crossovers. I can't keep up. There's so many glyphs and graphics, and I don't know what your language is, and just all these things. So
you don't have your decoder ring?
I don't think... I'm hoping that he doesn't mean a carbon copy of that, and where we are going to see those 22-part crossovers. It doesn't sound like it, so I think he was just using that as a jumping off point, but that name can be a curse word to some people right now who are reading X-Men, so that's the only thing that gives me some pause. But I do think with everything we're seeing right now, the trajectory that it's headed, everybody should be very excited. It's a really good time to be a Batman fan and to be a DC fan in general.
Yeah, I think he meant it more in terms of hey, we have this epic story to tell, and you guys are in for a treat when we get to the conclusion of this. But we will turn the page, and we will come back to this obviously when, as we see more of what Tynion and his cohorts have in mind for the DC or the Batman family. So we will turn the page on that, and we will go to the last topic of the day. This is another buying or selling topic. There was a rumor this week. Now, it is from a person that apparently has given a lot of false information or terrible information, that Kevin Feige is supposedly ditching Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel's powers, and Origin. Are you buying or selling that as a possibility?
Well, yeah, she's Green Lantern now. You didn't hear that? You didn't think that was a reasonable source? I'm not. I'm selling it. I think this is a really big, this is a stepping stone for them to continue their future slate. Kamala Khan is a really big character right now. They've already announced that the sequel to Captain Marvel is going to be Marvels, which is going to be, again, passing that torch from Brie Larson to her. It is very crucial for them that people are accepting of this character and that it works. It's also a big stepping stone for them because it is their first Muslim character that is going to be on there, their first Muslim superhero.
It's going to get them a lot of publicity.
And it's just it's a good opportunity for them to showcase it. And she already is a really cool character with really great powers. To try to mess with that on your first attempt going up there, I would be very, very surprised, especially with everything and all the groundwork we've seen laid out by this guy before. He clearly is a guy with a plan that is always 3 steps ahead of everybody. Even when a global pandemic hits, he still finds a way to work around and still make something that's interesting that you must watch television every Friday night on things that who would have thought that would have happened again in the world of streaming. I don't think that he would just go, it would be cool. I like it, but what if she was a Green Lantern instead? It would really stretch my level of believability. So I'm kind of selling that. That to me, it doesn't even ring like a hint of truth. That sounds so far out there that it just sounds kind of crazy.
So one of the foundation they built this on, it seemed like, was the belief that Kevin Feige hates the Inhumans. I don't believe that.
He's not the only person.
Well, I don't believe. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I don't believe that, or else I don't think they would have done the Inhumans TV show. I think that they would have found some other way. And I know they didn't have the X-Men rights at that point, so that they were trying to build up the Inhumans to kind of fill that void. I don't think they would have used the Inhumans if he hated the Inhumans that much. Number two, if he hates the Inhumans that much, it would be much less of a change to the character if they just changed her from being an Inhuman to a mutant.
Right. Easy fix.
Yeah. And then they get their first mutant, and so she has even more importance within the Marvel MCU at that point.
And that I would believe way more if that was the rumor, because I have heard a lot of stuff that he was not a big fan of that Inhumans TV show, and he kind of didn't want it to be happening in the first place. I would buy that story.
Well,
more.
The budget on it wasn't the movie that they did at seemed to have a much bigger budget, and then when it moved to TV, it was less so.
Seemingly intentional, it was kind of built to fail. But again, I would buy that rumor, and like you said, it would be much, much easier for them to just say, well, not an Inhuman, she's a mutant, especially with them having the rights to the X-Men, and they could also use that as a bridge for whenever the X-Men get here, since as they have announced all of their titles leading up to 2023, there is still no big X-Men movie, which people have been waiting for.
So then let's move on to number 2. Then we have G. Willow Wilson, who I'm sure they're going to have do interviews and stuff. Would it be a good interview if they had her out there and I'm like, hey, this is your character? I know it's not really your character, but, what do you think of... I don't think that would be a good publicity thing for them, and I think that would fail miserably for them and definitely have a backlash. And I think it would also be a backlash if they changed it even without having her go do interviews and they have this really popular Muslim character who people love, and you did all these things to her to make her less cool. What's up with that?
She's a very outspoken person in herself. Not rude, but she's just a very strong woman. She really stands by her beliefs, and I do think if they were to change something like this, I think she'd have something to say about it, and a lot of people would listen to that. Rightfully so, I agree. I think it would be a misstep to do anything to her character. I think she's a really great character as is, a really good opportunity, a young character that they can build a bridge off of to last for however long he wants to ride this train out for this, Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it would be a shame to mess that up, but I do think that G. Willow Wilson would have something to say about it, and I think a lot of people would listen. And even the people who don't believe it and don't know the character, I think if they saw, okay, well, here's what it was supposed to be, they would go, oh, well, that does seem better. Why wasn't it that? Why did you do that? This seems like a mistake. This seems like this was way cooler. Why would you make that move?
And that brings me to my third point. Over the last 4 or 5 years that you've worked here, I'm sure you've noticed along with me that we've had a lot of 12 to 18-year-old girls come in and buy the Ms. Marvel graphic novels. Mm-hmm. They don't make the movies. Partially, they make the movies for guys my age, but they are definitely shifting towards like targeting the younger demographic at this point. I'm 45. I think for the most part they're starting to target that 16 to 25, 16 to 30-year-old demographic. If they make that change, I think that they're going to alienate that group. They are enthusiastic about that character. They love that character. They love what she's going through in the books. They love like the how she's grown over the last 7-8 years at this point. I think that they would burn a lot of the capital that they've built up with the character. And like I said, I mean, I just go back to G. Willow Wilson, who's a very likable person and who has put a lot of herself into that character. And I feel like it would just be very wrong on so many levels if they changed that character to that degree. And for those who don't know, what they were talking about was giving her power bracelets that gave her the powers, and they weren't going to be elastic powers from the sound of it.
No, it was going to be very similar. It was going to be based on like her willpower. It was going to be very similar to a Green Lantern ring, but power bracelets to match with her outfit more. But again, kind of so far out there that I really just don't buy it. And I think with everything that we've seen from Marvel, I think this would be a giant step back. I think it would be a slap to the face to the character, to G. Willow Wilson, to all of these fans on a character, especially comics needs young readers. And this is a character that actually sees young readership for them to do that. And it takes something, one of the few properties they really care about, and to just completely change it and say, nah, that way's dumb. We're going to do it this way. Like, I think it would just be a misstep.
It doesn't seem to fit with Kevin Feige's.
No, I don't think he would do
either.
that. Like I said, he seems 3 steps ahead of everybody. I don't think that would be the move. I think he's smarter than that. I don't think he would do that.
And he's the Marvel chief creative officer. Like I said, none of it makes sense on any level. But I think you and I are in agreement that we would both sell this rumor.
Yeah.
I know that some people were trying to use it to capitalize on getting people to sell their first appearances on the cheap, but maybe that was the goal from the beginning. I don't know. But that we will turn the page on that topic, and we will see once we see it on the screen as to which path they chose. So that concludes this episode of Turning the Page. We want to ask you once again to please LCS, like, comment, and subscribe to the Brainstorm Comics YouTube channel. You can click on the logo in the lower right-hand corner. It'll take you to the subscribe button. Again, we want to thank you for watching, and have a good day.